This is genuinely what happened when I first opened Skyrim and started my new biannual playthrough. It is really absurd that a game this old with so many different releases is like this sometimes. It took me right out of my calm headspace and it made me kind of angry. I thought to myself, why am I doing this again? For what reason am I subjecting myself to this broken, buggy mess of a game?
Hey, you're finally awake.
But when I left Helgen and was allowed freedom to re-explore the world, I remembered again. For all that this game does to piss me off, I can always count on it to be the exact thing that calms me down again. This setting, this world, is a perfect creation that I wish I could live in. It's why I and many others find ourselves replaying this game every 6 months. For all that Bethesda fails at, especially in recent years, what they can do almost always is build a world that is interesting to look at and which inspires you to go deeper. Talking about Skyrim on YouTube is a thing people have done since the Stone Age. Neanderthals were carving their YouTube scripts into cave walls when this game first came out, and so I realized that there's not much novelty to the idea of making a YouTube video about it. With that in mind, instead of railing against the game's weaknesses, I would rather speak to all that makes me love the game without relying too heavily on my regular script-based format. And I'll keep it rather short because you've heard it all before and there's really no need to make this an hour long. Discovering Riverwood for the first time is something I wish I could do again. There's not necessarily anything special about Riverwood. There aren't really any quests to be found here, many of the characters can't be interacted with, and it only serves to be a kind of stopping point for the player on their way into the larger world. And just because there's nothing really here for the player, does that make it any less alive? All these people seem to have their own lives and their own problems that will exist regardless of my being here. And that feels really special to me. Because on the surface level, there's a lot going on here, and while there is a lot going on in this game as a whole, it's never really as much as it seems. It's the atmosphere though. The lore and the factions, the rivalries, you could drown in all of it. You can spend hours reading books, learning all that happened in the different eras of Tamriel and Lorcan's plan. Like, who the fuck is Lorcan? It all makes this place real. There are plenty of other towns that I can take a more active role in if I choose. And it's in those more active cities that I'll spend a majority of my time. But slow towns like Riverwood and Falkreath serve as a reminder to the idea that this is a real world, because the real world can be boring. I am very often fucking bored. I mean, that's why I'm talking to myself right now. And just the fact that there are people who work at this mill is great. There doesn't need to be 6 dragons bounding over from a nearby mountain to engage me in something that I can more actively participate in. It's sometimes fun to just exist. This game had so much to offer every single person who played it, regardless of which game genre typically interested them, which I realize can also be viewed as a negative, as it's commonly been said that Skyrim shaves down classic RPG elements for the sake of mass appeal. And that's true, but mass appeal alone does not make a game one of the greatest of all time. We should acknowledge that many people were drawn to this game simply because it's intriguing. And though there isn't as much of a class system as there is in other RPGs, Skyrim pretty effectively struck a balance between variety and this mass appeal created by simplifying its systems. I recently started a playthrough as a mage, which is something I've somehow managed to never have done before, and it's kind of fun. The fact that I'm able to ignore so much of the game in one playthrough, but then to really explore all that I missed in the next, is what's special about these types of games. There's just enough variety here to keep you entertained for years, as it has done. You're not likely to see everything in one playthrough, or even 2. And when you decide to take a break from one task, there are countless others waiting for you, which can have the intoxicating effect of keeping you up far past your bedtime. Soren Kierkegaard called anxiety the dizziness of freedom. I don't necessarily feel anxious when playing this game, and I also don't mean to sound pretentious by bringing up this quote. I think that it's an interesting idea that can be applied to a number of things. I sometimes feel as though it would be easier to not play Skyrim at all. I never know what quests to start first or in what order to complete them. I know it's a stupid problem, but genuinely all of my playthroughs end because I'm not sure what I want to do next. This is also a good thing though, of course. It suggests that there is a lot to do. I generally start on the main quest up until I unlock all 3 words of the unrelenting force shout before I have to stop because it's not a good quest line and I can't stand Delphine or Esbern.
I'm not ungrateful for what you've done. Esbern speaks for both of us. But our oath as
I don't think the main quest is ever the primary point of focus for Bethesda, besides maybe in Fallout 4 where faction questlines all lead into the main quest. Skyrim quests are all very separated from one another, and most of them don't even make mention of the fact that your character is the Dragonborn. It's a little unrealistic, I suppose. Like, why am I, as the most powerful person in Tamriel, running errands for the Stormcloaks? But what this allows you is the ability to not even once acknowledge that your character is the Dragonborn. And your character can be whatever you choose, which is amplified by mods like Live Another Life. It's for this reason that I don't really mind too much if the main quest is less interesting than other parts of the game. There are plenty more quests to do, so what's the matter if one of them isn't as fun? Ultimately though, I think that the main quest does its job. Once you've completed it too, you feel like you're kind of undefeatable across Skyrim, even if that's definitely not true. Another aspect I very much adore about Skyrim is its ability to implement quests that don't just revolve around combat. Quests which allow you to take a break from killing things. I'm talking about things like the Bard's College and a couple from the College of Winterhold in particular. And though these questlines at one point or another have you completing dangerous tasks, they don't feel like the main focus, and I appreciate that there's an acknowledgement that everything occurring in Skyrim does not involve some evil witch plotting or scheming. There are of course also a bunch of little miscellaneous tasks that explore this idea further. Faendal and Sven's rivalry over Camilla come to mind, having just talked about Riverwood. I love when Bethesda integrates these little storylines that you have the ability to influence in some small way. I never played Fallout 3 extensively, and people who love that game will scoff at me for only having just learned this, but apparently there's a vault in that game just full of Gary clones. They all just keep saying Gary in like different tones and inflections.
Gary!
Not everything needs to be emotionally heavy or have some big importance in the world. Sometimes they can just be silly, fun little inconsequential things to complete.
Ah, Gary.
I somehow always manage to start talking about music, and I swear it's not intentional. Well, I mean it is because I'm forcing the words out of my mouth, but I mean whatever. When it comes to the music of Skyrim, you can't not talk about it. A couple of years ago, I got into the really awful habit of falling asleep while watching YouTube, which has now given me the inability to fall asleep without something playing. This results in me waking up with one AirPod inside my rectum and the other halfway across the room as if I threw it during one of my many spells of night terrors. Because what gets me to sleep like nothing else is the Skyrim soundtrack, paired with some rain sounds. It's a shame that Jeremy Soul's second favorite thing next to making music is allegedly sexually assaulting people, because his music in The Elder Scrolls 6 I'm sure would have been just as nice as his previous work. Yeah, sure, part of it is nostalgia, I recognize that, but the other part is that this is just amazing music. Whether it be Secunda or The Streets of Whiterun, I truly don't think I've heard better music for a game, besides maybe that of Minecraft, and even then I can't decide. The game's music is the cherry on top. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but every element of this game would be objectively worse if I weren't being serenaded throughout. This game has been with us for a long time now, and what I think that means is that as we progress through time, the more we play it, the easier it becomes to notice Skyrim's now seemingly glaring issues. There are serious quest-breaking bugs which you're going to encounter in every playthrough, and because there hasn't been an Elder Scrolls in almost 12 years, it's easy to compare the issues of Fallout 76 and even Fallout 4 to those of Skyrim, and to then retroactively apply our same dislike of aspects of those games to this one, and I think that's unfair. Skyrim gets a pass in my book. It was made in 2011, and that's not super long ago, but we shouldn't be applying our 2023 gaze on it. Fallout 4 and 76 don't get that same pass because by the time of their development, Bethesda had every opportunity to fix these issues. In recent years, we've adjusted our opinion of Bethesda from viewing them as developer gods to viewing them as just a very flawed and oftentimes greedy company, and even questioning whether they were ever good in the first place. And with Starfield set to release in a couple of months, I think that looking back at this game one last time can tell us a lot about what we subconsciously or consciously want from a Bethesda game. I have faith in Bethesda and their ability to create good games, but a lot of people are seemingly very skeptical about what Starfield is going to look like. Perhaps rightfully so, but I think after Fallout 4 and especially after 76, it's likely that they understand the general vibe of what people want and expect from them. At least I hope they do. But I worry of whether its supposed scope and size can be met with an equal amount of quality. In particular, Todd's statements worry me because he very famously makes such grandiose claims about every game he lead develops, and they're very often wrong. There can be issues with Starfield, there are issues with Skyrim, and there are issues with Fallout 3, but they're dismissible so long as the overall experience is fun. Not only is Skyrim fun, but it's calming and it's relaxing. It's the therapy that I need but can't afford. I've been getting back into Counter-Strike recently, which has been a lot of fun but can also be so fucking infuriating sometimes. But it's okay, because their Skyrim is ready to boot up. I don't have to watch angles in Skyrim, I don't have to rush B and then get bogged down in tunnels because people don't know what rush B means. I can just do nothing, and I can have a good time. I will be forever thankful for Skyrim and the memories it's created over the past 12 years. Making a game like this is not easy, and it's not perfect, but I love it, and that's all.